and then getting to the point of evaluating effectiveness. So at the individual student level, again, this is where that intervention data analysis team comes in. We're monitoring individual students receiving those interventions to determine whether that intervention is working and whether we need to continue the intervention, change it, or have the student exit the intervention altogether. Maybe for either they exited successfully or we're doing something completely different, like a special education referral. The typical people that we see here are a principal, again, an administrator of some sort, an interventionist, a data analyst, or a school psychologist, somebody who can really read that progress monitoring data and know what that data is telling us. These typically happen every 6 weeks for academic needs. For behavior, if you're using like check in, check out, you can use the daily point sheets as a way to monitor that progress about every 3 weeks to make decisions about these things. We're reviewing the progress monitoring data and that intervention data that I just mentioned. So are we doing what we said we would, and are we doing it the way that it was intended? And then we're, of course, making decisions based on decision rules that we've already established. And if you haven't established them yet, at least starting here is going to give you a good starting point for you to start to think about the questions you're asking and at what cut points might you need to put in place to help you with the decision-making process. This shouldn't take longer than 3 minutes per student. So if you have a list of 20 kids, you can get that done in an hour. Very effectively, and you do this every 6 weeks. Of course, it goes faster if you have a system that gives you the data in a very easy, you have to be very organized when you go into those meetings to be able to get through it in 60 minutes. So one of the questions is there enough data to make a decision? So we want to have at least 6 data points for us to make a decision. And by decision, I don't mean like high stakes decisions, but we want to make sure that we have enough data to be confident in the choices that we're making about the student. Another question that's really important in this case, is there a lot of variability in the data? By that I mean, how often are we seeing high and low scores? And at what point, if we see a lot of variability, we would be less confident in the actual scores themselves. So that might mean that the student is distracted or that the measure itself is very unreliable. So it's really important that we look at the amount of bounce that happens from one data point to another. So the closer the data points are, the more confident you can be that trend line is actually showing us true skill. And then, of course, wanting to look at how does the student's current rate of improvement compare to what we said was the goal. There's a lot that you need to know about the goal setting, but making sure that we're setting realistic goals is very important. And then also thinking about what is the student's growth percentile? Is the student making catch-up growth? Again, going back to that concept that if they're only making average growth, that means they're going to continue to just stay at that same level because it's typical. We want to have accelerated levels of growth. So we want to see higher growth percentiles for our students. This is an example for behavior or for social emotional needs. Here you can see that over a 4-week period, 3 or 4 week period, our 80% of the points, 80% of the points that that the student had possible to earn, are they earning that consistently? So this would be kind of like for check in, check out, an example of some of the data you might have or collect. You're going to check the student plan document, and here you can make sure that are we implementing the intervention with fidelity? And this is an example of a printout that we have. And if we are seeing that we're not implementing the intervention, why not? And we also want to make sure that the student was attending and that they were engaged. And so recording all of that information during the intervention sessions is really important. And then, of course, making and documenting your rationale. So when you're making the decisions about students, we're going to continue because, we're going to change the intervention because, fading it out. So you have all of these different things listed out, and you can use this as an example. But making sure that we're documenting why we're making the decisions so that when we come back later on, we can understand what was happening.